Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Cut and Splice. This is Gil,
And I'm Matt.
And this is Jason.
and today we're talking about 300, the 2006 Zack Snyder movie, not to confuse with any other 300s. Um, I was the one who suggested this one. I've been meaning to do this one for a bit. Um, and I think we've discussed Zack Snyder's over the topness in the past, like Man of Steel. So I don't know why, but I felt like it was time to give this one a go because I feel like there is something to talk about here as far as the split between the viewers and the critics. It's one of those movies where you either hate it or you love it to some degree, which I guess is a theme in Snyder's career. Um, and then beyond that, also the themes of it, I felt like it was funny because, like Matt said, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do another war movie this quickly because we've done so many of them. But this is technically a war movie to some degree.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. But in a very different sort of way.
Very stylized.
Yeah. And the poster is staring me in the face here in my office space. So if nothing else, that's a reason to do it. And so I guess for you guys, have you? I think if I'm not mistaken, because I don't rewatch movies very often, I think I've only seen this movie once or twice. Did you? Have you revisited it since like it came out?
I've watched this movie many times.
Yeah.
Although I will say I haven't watched it in this was the first last night or 2 nights ago, whenever it was I watched it, was the first time I have seen it in probably 10 years. No, that's not true. Yeah, close to that. 8 to 10 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It's one of those movies that I kind of really enjoyed when I was in film school, and I was willing to, chew hours on, just kind of revisiting it. And then I grew up, and I was just kind of like, uh, there are other things to watch. So
wow,
definitely.
That's pretty negative way of putting it, but yeah.
No, but I think what
That
it
might
means,
be-
I hope, yeah,
Sure.
it's more
Yeah.
than just like there's other movies to watch. I mean, that's pretty much has been my philosophy. That's why even my favorite movies, I only rewatch like once. Like if I've seen it in theaters and I've loved it, like The Dark Knight or There Will Be Blood, some of those movies were from our formidable years, No Country for Old Men, I've seen probably once, you know, and then I'll see it again for like prepping for an episode. But it's like, to me, a third, fourth, fifth rewatch, that's just unless it's a Kubrick film, it just doesn't really happen that much for me. Or Sergio Leone, say, like some of those I've seen.
I can tell you that for me, when this movie came out, let's see. Yeah, I was working we were all in film school when this came out, but I was working at a movie theater when this came out, and I probably saw it at least 4 times in theaters.
Mhm.
But I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was free and stuff. But still, yeah, I was extremely excited about this movie when it came out, and I'll go into it more later. But yeah, essentially, I saw it many times when it was in theaters. I think at home after it came out on DVD, I know I bought it on DVD. I probably only watched it once or twice though in the following years, and then, like I said, then about 8 to 10 years would go by, and I probably just watched it again tonight for the first time in about that much time.
There's a lot to unpack in this movie.
Well, should we wait for the spoilers, or is it just overall review as far as unpacking?
Uh, Yeah, I'll just wait for spoilers. I don't think I think that there are a few gripes that I have. Okay, okay. One gripe that I do have that I don't think is a spoiler is that the voiceover at the beginning of the movie makes no fucking sense. In that you've got this storyteller who's telling the story of King Leonidas, but he literally puts it into his story that it's the story of every Spartan man. And you know that he's telling it to a bunch of Spartan men who have gone through the same fucking process. So why the hell is he giving this whole speech about what it is to be a Spartan man to a bunch of Spartan men who went through the same process as as Leonidas? I'm like, why is that a thing?
Yeah, we should definitely keep it for the spoiler part to get deeper into that. But uh, because of the situational part of like when he's telling it and all that towards the end.
That's set up like the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, but the rebuttal,
the rebuttal.
I agree with Gil.
Okay, but in any case, but yeah, the main thing I think with this movie and why I think it was just special when it came out because it was in some ways this came out a little bit after Sin City, right?
Yes, a year or
Yes.
two.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like Sin City like walk so this movie could run type of thing. Like Sin City sort of got the visual aspect of comics. I felt like the try, especially the dark comics, the whatchamacallit,
Frank Miller
the
comics.
Frank Miller comics, um, and um, and did what the Ang Lee Hulk movie didn't do well, is to try and like
Let's call it what it is. It's not didn't do well, failed miserably.
yeah, no, the idea of trying to translate the page
Yeah,
to the
failed
screen in a
miserably.
way that
Exactly.
makes it, and one of the ways that in movies it works, and the Ang Lee thing, he was just trying to have a lot of different boxes, but it's slowing down the action because the comics are frozen images that have motion insinuated in them. So it made sense to translate it into a lot of slow motion, and almost like borderline still images in the case of Sin City. But then Sin City suffered from some storytelling issues. It was like like an anthology. It was like a bit all over the place. I don't think it was connected super well. And in this movie, it just came together just right. And maybe it is because of what we spoke about adaptations, how the 300 comic like barely has any dialogue in it, and it's fairly short, and that enables it's like a short story. Like it's essentially taking a short story like All You Zombies, or like all the ones adaptations that we've done in recent times, and you can expand on it, and you can enrich it, that world. You can add more to it, and which makes it easier to translate it to the movie world. And then you bring in the elements of the slow motion and the imagery, and it just makes for like a very, very powerful, I guess, a movie, like, because it is like borderline just not a movie. Like the closest thing I can compare it to is like a Sergio Leone movie. It's like if Tarantino was more of a visual director and not a dialogue driven director. That's what a modern day Sergio Leone would do, is what Zack Snyder did, at least in this movie. And I guess he hasn't been able to recreate it as successfully in his other movies. But
That's what
it's
I would say.
this is the closest that I saw it. Like taking some like action that is fairly straightforward done in other movies, like Braveheart or whatever have you, type of movies, and it's done well. But here it's like, wait, but come on, this is a movie. Like, this is not real life. It's a movie. Let's have some fun with this. Like, let's really make it engaging. Let's really take our time. Let's really make it suspenseful. And it's just a joyride, really, to me personally. But I was going to ask you, I guess, on top of that, to also ask if maybe there is a little bit of what you're saying is that, are we slightly blindsided by the fact that we did see it when we were younger and we were in film school? If there's like a little bit of like the romanticism of that period, and maybe looking back, like Matt, at least it sounds like from Matt's perspective that it hasn't aged super well for either of you. Or
I'll let you kick the crap out of me because I'm going to have a lot of strong opinions. But go right ahead.
Okay. Well, but what about you, Jason?
I would say that it would be very healthy to maintain a certain level of skepticism about this movie and how it's aged. I would say I would welcome anyone to certainly, I think it's definitely a discussion worth having, is what I'll say, about, was it just something really cool at the time, or is it as good? to steal the concept from that movie Bob guy, was it really that good? I personally think it's a fantastic movie. Do I have problems with it? Yeah, it's not perfect. It's got some issues, but more or less, I'd say it's hands down the best thing that Zack Snyder's ever made. And I think I agree with you that it's, in a way, at least in its own way, kind of the best adaptation visually of what it's like to read a comic book, bearing in mind that this is a very particular kind of comic book, not a very normal comic book, and that it did capture it very, very well. I wouldn't say that this is like broad strokes, like what you should expect a comic book to be like, or what it feels like to read any comic book. Just to read it's a perfect adaptation, I think. But just throwing this out there, because we can also talk about this too. I agree with what you're saying, Gil, but I actually have based on what you're saying, I would say I have probably a higher opinion of Sin City than you do as well. I think that one's very good as well.
Yeah, no. I think we've established at some point that you like it more than me. So I mean, I'll say right now, like the like 300, I rated it 9 back then, and I wonder if, like, that's why I was questioning whether it was like an emotional, and this is why I wanted to revisit it, because I really have I feel very strongly about it. But I watched this movie and I'm like, no, this is a 9. This is like up there for me. Like, as far as action movies, this is like T2 level. This is like Dark Knight level. It's not as good of a movie, but it's as memorable. It's as rewatchable. It's just as monumental as an event, for me personally. Like this is like, like ID4, like these movies that, depending on the age you're in, you could come across a movie like that even in an older age. But there's definitely a period when you're a teenager and when you're like in your 20s, especially in film school, that there might be movies that really hit the spot. Sin City, I rated a 7. I mean, it looked nice, but it was not much more than that. And I think the critics and the viewers are with you, because it seems like Sin City has better ratings in both. But what's interesting to me about 300 is that the it's 7.6 for the viewers on IMDb, and it's 5.2 for the critics, which is a pretty big gap. It's one of those movies that the critics really didn't like, but I really think that there's also a lot of substance to this movie to some degree, even though it's completely over the top. But
I would say it's surprisingly a lot of substance for how little dialogue is in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the sparseness that they brought from the comic book itself that I think, and this is what we can, I guess, discuss like in the second half. But yeah, I don't know what was like your rating for it, Jason.
I'm falling back on bad habits because I didn't think about that. But I would say I like the way that you put your description of this, because when I think of a 9, nearly every other like 9 that I could think of, if we were to go back and look, like make a list or something of what I've said was like a 9, I would say are probably better movies. But when you said right now that there, I would almost put it like there's just something about this movie, that's that elevates it well beyond it what it should be. Um, I would probably also put it as like a light 9 also. And just to kind of double down on what you're talking about, how it's like almost like an event, that it was like this, I say less of an event, more like it was it almost defined a point in time, I would say, in my head for movies, because I remember when this movie came out, um I remember telling my friends, I don't think I've seen an action movie that good. And particularly talking about the action. Yes, I'm talking about the movie itself and the quality of a film as well, but specifically the action aspects of it. I remember telling people, I don't think I've seen a movie that good since The Matrix in terms of action. And then I remember years would go by when I would see another great action movie that I really, really connected with. I would say, oh man, the last time I saw a movie that good was 300, and before that, The Matrix. And then, like, probably 3 to 4 years later, after like The Raid came out, I was like, that's the greatest action movie I've seen since 300 or since The Matrix. Not to say that it's not better than those, but just those are the like, the points in history where there was a clearly defined action movie that was just, that to me at least, stood over the heads of all the others just noticeably. Also 3 or 4 years after that, I remember going to the movies with Matt to see Fury Road, and I was like, that's the best action movie I've seen since The Raid. And before that, before The Raid, probably 300. Before that, probably The Matrix. Like, it's that point in time for me where it's like it's defined by The Matrix, or by 300. So to me, I that's why I would say that it's like a 9, because while story wise it might only be like a nice 8, it's got something that elevates it well beyond what it should be. It's just got something powerful about this movie.
Yeah, like it's almost like a visceral. And I wonder if it's very. I wonder about the ratings breakdown. If it's like, if it veers very male, and this will lead into the spoiler discussion with the, when we discuss like just some of the themes and stuff. But yeah, what about you, Matt?
I think it's a 7. I mean, it has some nice images, but the geography of the actual fight sequences makes no fucking sense, and it's in a context of a battle that should have geography that's really fucking simple. I mean, like, some of the more poignant moments of the movie make no fucking sense if you spend 2 seconds thinking about it. Uh, the fact that most of it was shot on blue screen makes it actually feel smaller than it should have actually felt. Uh, I mean, it has some great images. It has some great performances. It has some uh, it has some admirable qualities that I'm going to bump it up, a couple of spots. But I mean, geez, there are a lot of mistakes, a lot of blaring mistakes in this movie. So yeah, I'm gonna stick my flag at a 7 for the moment, and it might go down. So
So we'll
or
see.
up.
If we
Yeah.
can,
It might go up. You never know.
yeah, we might convince you.
Yeah.
But to me personally, I mean, one thing I would say before we get into spoilers, unless we have anything else, but the story that I like the most about this movie is the scene um, with Gerard Butler with the madness. This is madness.
Hmm.
Um, like the way that the take that they use in the movie came about, like and I think it's in the trailer, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like this is Sparta when he kicks him. Um, it um, that moment almost didn't happen, and that moment is essentially a microcosm of the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's potentially the most important scene in the whole movie because they did it several different takes, and he was doing it kind of normal, serious tone, and I don't recall the exact story of who came with this idea, if it was Butler or if it was Snyder, but somebody, I think it was Butler, like he kind of did like a completely over the top take that and then he apologized and he said like I don't know what I did there, like I don't know why I raised my voice so much, like he thought it was a mistake, and Snyder was like, I love it. Like Snyder totally got that. And I don't know at what point in the production they've shot that scene, but to me, it really feels like that moment informed the entire movie of the way it should be. And it reminds me of Kubrick, like what Kubrick used to do to his actors. He would he would he would deal with some actors that are prima donnas and wouldn't want to give him like a take in the style that he would want, and he would say like, okay, let's do it 10, 20 times, and then on the 21st time just give me one take just completely over the top, and he would always use that take. I think mainly in Doctor Strangelove he did that a lot to get like good comedic performances from some of the, like George C. Scott specifically, because he was a serious actor. um, and then here, this is basically all like the crazy take that you're not supposed
Yeah.
to use,
Yeah.
but then like it all makes it, and I just, and in 9 out of 10 movies it would fall flat, and here it just flies. I can't explain. You can't explain it.
Um, I don't know how accurate your take on that story is, but I definitely remember reading and hearing about that as well. And I don't I'm not sure how much of this overlaps, but like I remember I think it was Gerard Butler who was saying at one point, I'm sure many people have told the story of that scene, but I remember seeing him in some sort of interview talking about that moment and saying that when he did it, that when they called cut, like people on the set, like other actors and stuff, after they called cut, people were laughing because it was just absurd, like completely absurd. And I don't even think the way he was talking about it wasn't like he was butthurt. Like he wasn't saying like they laughed at me. Like he was just saying like I can't believe I did that, and everyone was laughing like that. That's just ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
This is Boss.
No, I mean, you think
Yeah,
about it, like you think about like movies like the Sergio Leone westerns. Like, come on, some of those takes, like some of the long takes of like the performances. I can only imagine that people burst out laughing. It's just so over the top. But when you're in it, and if it's consistent in the movie,
mhm.
like it just really takes you to a different place. A different like state of being almost.
Yeah,
Uh,
No,
totally.
I mean, I don't deny that. It, the movie has its fucking moments. I'm not gonna like wave that off. Uh, what is more boring than a realistic battle? I mean, like this battle did happen. It was what 480, 470 BC. Historical inaccuracies be damned. I mean, obviously, this was not supposed to be a historical drama. This was supposed to be hyperbole in every way, shape, and form. The entire idea of the movie is built around this, like creating this bottleneck. And still, like so many of the pivotal battle sequences seem to like forget that they had the wall up, forget that there's this narrow crevice. Like, yeah, I mean, like, I mean, some of the most pivotal battle scenes seem to be happening in an open field, and like the geography just doesn't make any sense. It's just one of those things where, like, if you're going to make a movie about a battle, it kind of seems like you should make a movie about a battle, especially if you're going to establish the movie on the basis of, hey, these are the tactics that we're going to use, and this is how 300 men are going to stand up against 1,000,000. You might as well at least establish the damn geography of the actual scenes, and they never actually established the damn geography.
Well, I guess so. We can get into spoilers. So yeah, so talking
Matt
about
rushed us into spoilers here a little bit.
Yeah, well, they didn't rush us. I mean, we're like almost 30 minutes in, but
I'm just joking.
but the geography, I totally agree. It's definitely a pet peeve of mine with action movies when the battle scenes are messy and there's not a lot of strategy. I think there's definitely some strategy in this that plays into this movie because they do build the wall from the bodies and they drop it on them and they have the strategy with the arrows and they'll fight in the shade. And so there's all these nice moments, not as intricate as like some of the Braveheart strategy and some of the other movies that like to have a lot that goes into it. Because mostly this whole thing is about, yes, this narrow path that's near the ocean that they're trying to hold them off as long as possible from passing through, and it is messy. And I don't think, to me personally, that it was ever not completely clear. It was definitely messy, but it worked well for this specific movie because it still gave me some moments of strategy. Like it explained why they're so good at what they do, especially in contrast to the whatever you know the ones that joined them from the Greek, or I don't know which ones those are.
Oh, they're all Greek, but
Yeah, they're all Greek, but
The other Greeks.
the other Greeks, yeah, the ones who were
Acadians.
warriors, Arcadians, yeah,
yeah,
The
and make
people
a
that
mess
would
of
eventually,
things.
they eventually would come to settle a small part of Southern California and name the city after themselves.
Arcadia. Oh,
Matt, I would say that I agree with you that there are scenes in this movie. Even the very first time I saw it, I remember thinking to myself that there are scenes where the action gets a little muddled, a little like what specifically regarding geography, where it's like a little frustrating. But what frustrates me about it isn't so much that I think it's really, really poor. It's that, like you kind of alluded to, they do a good job 2 to 3 times explaining precisely what their plan is and what the actual geography looks like that they're going to be fighting on. And so, with it so well established what's going to be happening and where they are, where they're fighting, it's odd to me that there's ever a point where it gets chaotic and confusing. Not chaotic in like the fighting can't be chaotic, just in the sense of like, where is this supposed to be happening, kind of thing. You know, I feel like there are those scenes that I'm pretty sure you were referring to where they're kind of using their effect, where they're moving the camera around and whatever throughout the combatants and everything. A lot of the slow-mo stuff. There's moments where the background of the shot is kind of like just open. And to me, I feel like, especially when the shots are in a profile, which they are about 80% of the time, virtually every shot should have a mountainous wall behind them, not the wall they built, but the rock wall of the mountains, you know? Or if it's the reverse shot, there should be an ocean behind them, like a cliff
Yeah.
and an ocean. And we don't get that. Now, as far as like you said, we established their thing is to use the narrow pathway to make the enemy's numbers count for nothing. They say it like 6 times in the movie and whatever, blah 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 blah. I don't fault the movie for that at all, because we all know that in real life, the Battle of Thermopylae was essentially the very first. It would have looked like the very first, probably 30 seconds to a minute of the action, and it would have just looked like that for a long, long, long time, days,
Yeah.
literally, and that's going to get old. And they had ideas for what they wanted to do and how they wanted to make this interesting, and those ideas worked really, really well, and they got some of the most incredible action scenes that anyone had ever seen at the time, and probably still to this day. And really, the only thing you have to give it is, okay, so sometimes they're kind of creeping out of the crevice. I mean, the geography they've established also still funnels the enemy to them. They can't just attack all at once. There's even before they get to the narrow passageway, there's a narrower area that they can come to. So, I mean, technically, it is still all kind of doing what they said. They're just asking you to kind of accept a little bit of suspension of disbelief that they are going to charge out into the field a little bit, and that there's going to be a rhinoceros charging at them, stuff like that. But I don't really fault them for varying up the action and changing where the stuff takes place from shot to shot. Sometimes where they're like, sometimes they're in the crevice, sometimes they're by the wall, sometimes they're a little further out, and sometimes they're pushing people off a cliff. All that stuff to me doesn't bother me at all. What does bother me is kind of what I think you were talking about, where it's like these moments where you're kind of like, well, where's this supposed to be? Like, I can guess that it's further out a little ways, because I don't see the rock wall behind them. I don't see the ocean behind them. So it's kind of an odd choice. I don't know why they did that. But what bothers me is that this is a movie, like, it's the kind of stuff that I would find very forgivable if it weren't for the fact that it's so easy to get right. That's what bothers me about it. They've established the geography. It should be very simple. One shot should have rocks behind them. One should have an ocean behind them. Or if it's dead on, like looking at them, you should be able to see the wall and the crack, the crevice canyon thing behind them. Or if they're looking the other direction, POV shot, you should be able to see hordes and hordes of enemies behind that, or at least a haze or something. Those are the four shots. It's like, so to me, it's frustrating because it should be very easy to get it right. But other than that, it doesn't really bother me too much.
Well, I mean, when you look at the actual chronology of the movie, like the wall that they're building at Thermopylae, like going into that crevice, it exists, and then it doesn't exist, and then it exists again, and then they use it, and then it doesn't exist, and it doesn't make any damn sense. On a broader sense, though, the fact that this is one of those movies that was shot in the era of blue screen and green screen, and like anything that's in focus in the lens has to be real, and everything else, like let's just do it CGI. Like, this is one of those movies from that era, and it makes it feel so much smaller than so many movies that we've had afterward that just did it for real.
But the question is, does it need to be that? Does it need to be Braveheart? Does it need to be Troy? Like, does it need to be like an open space? Because the whole point of the movie, maybe that's why they're rationalizing the green screen action. The whole point of the movie is that it's a very confined space, so you can really kind of dig deep into the moments within it, but it's just this one space. And yes, you need to find a way to have segments of it, so it's not just one bloody thing for an hour and a half, so you can have moments to breathe. I think it just works for this movie. It makes it smaller, but that's okay. But it's the most epic smallestness that I've ever seen. It just really, really works. I just can't explain it. Like, there's something so grandiose about this movie that makes it so much bigger, especially like, say, a movie like Troy and and some other, like, I mean, this is no Gladiator, and I'm not even a big fan of Gladiator, but it's a very different type of movie, but I feel like it's got bigger things to say in some ways. I don't know, me personally. I mean, that could lead into discussion about the themes, because I mean, the whole point of this movie is that it's a very small amount of warriors that make a huge difference, uh, because they're fighting for freedom. They're fighting for, basically knowing that they're gonna die. Like, it's a suicide mission, but they know that them um, being that example of, like, we're not gonna bow to an outside, uh, you know, um, outside aggressor, and will fight till the last man. That could inspire a whole nation. Hopefully, they're politicians, but then they're warriors as well, to fight back this conquering power. And it's essentially like that's what the king is doing with these 300 men, is that he's trying to set that example. And it also bleeds into the whole thing of, like, this obsession that men generally over history have, this thing, like, often when you ask them about, like, what was some of the most significant moments in their lives, especially like World War II, a lot of people say was very consequential for a lot of people. Other wars, like, say, Vietnam, and other ones that were kind of stupid wars, maybe not as much. But there's this constant theme that war just brings out, sort of like the Shakespeare speech, like in, was it like Henry V or something, the fourth?
Uh,
Uh,
uh, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers
yeah,
for human
exactly.
hate. Yeah, that's
Band
Henry
of
V.
Brothers, another good example. They that's why they got the title from that, for Band of Brothers too. Is there's something about this camaraderie between men putting their lives on the line for the sake of freedom, for the sake of fighting an evil, that is just, there's very few things in life that beat that. Like, nowadays, luckily we have sports, which satisfies some of that aggression that is in men. But And then they burn out the whole city when they win a championship. But
I think that's unrelated.
yeah, no, but it's no, that's the problem, the same aggression. But there's something, and I think this movie touches that. Like, it touches that, and it brings it all the way home when I mean, like, the Fassbender, like, when his character says to one of the Arcadians, I guess,
Yeah.
saying about, like, yeah, like, this looks like it would be a great place to have an honorable death, like a warrior's death.
He
Like,
says that someone out in that crowd is probably good enough to kill me or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Gil, what you're touching on is actually a huge concept that we could almost talk about for an entire podcast, probably. But and I'm certainly not learned on this subject, but Frank Herbert talks about it in some of his books, particularly I think God Emperor of Dune, the fourth Dune book, talks a lot about it, because in the story there's a tyrannical ruler who rules over the entire galaxy, the entire universe, and has complete control over everything. And in an effort to, well, bring about their ideal world, their ideal society, and you can debate whether what they were doing is right or wrong after you read the book, but what they did was they made it so that nobody could have wars anymore, because they had complete control over transportation. And so nobody was able to have any sort of wars. And they remark about how after thousands of years of this control, it has this massive effect on society, which is probably bad, actually, the effect that it had, because it discusses how psychologically people, but especially men, have this innate need to prove themselves. And historically, that is something that happened in wars, which is what you were kind of touching on at the beginning, between these big giant wars that happen where an entire generation of people get sent off, and they all have a communal experience. at this thing in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, they don't all have the exact same experience, but it's something that kind of, in a way, binds them together. And it doesn't have to be war. There's other ways that people prove themselves, but that tends to be the way historically that people have, is at least from one generation to another. And then a lot of people find other ways during peacetime, but removing that aspect of society would have a massive consequence, which is what that whole book is largely talking about in a lot of ways. But yeah, like you said, I mean, there's historically, you could go down from one war to the next, to the next, to the next, and the way people talk about it, like you said, it's anyone who goes through something horrific like that, it's like a defining moment in their life, for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, like you said, it's not the only way to be useful
No,
to your
of
fellow
course not.
men, but there's something about it. It's sort of like the equivalent of courtroom dramas for TV. You know, like there's built-in conflict to it. There's just if you're fighting a war, there's there's no more extreme way of proving your worth than fighting in a war. You can prove your worth by being a good carpenter in your village, or you can prove yourself by being a good father. There's many ways, but any of those things is not remotely as close as putting your life on the line. You know, as far as like the stakes that are at play with war. And that's why there's something, and I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that it's as a phenomenon, it's very interesting for us in the modern age, and with wars happening less and less. Um, that this is part of our history. Like that survival used to be this, like constantly battling different tribes, like protecting your family, hunting for animals to survive in the wild, like all these instincts, like very animal instincts that are still with us, like they're in our history. And I think this movie explores it to some degree. That's interesting. Um, Anyways, but I guess Matt, if you want to uh, let us know some of the other flaws that you had mentioned before the spoilers, the mistakes.
Oh, I might actually come off as like a woke leftist at this point. Which you all know that I'm not. But when this movie came out, a lot of Iranians kind of had a gripe with the movie in terms of it being like, anti-Iranian, and obviously Persia is kind of built, was at that time kind of built in that Iranian region. And it's actually one of those cases where I think they might have a legitimate gripe. Like the Spartans were not like America, like a free state where you could just like come out and have free speech and dissent against the hierarchy and everything like that. In fact, I mean, Sparta was a slave state, and Persia at the time actually had like the earliest version of the Bill of Rights in recorded history. I mean, obviously, it's a 2,500-year-old version of the Bill of Rights. It's not like something that would be imagined in the modern age. But I mean, like portraying this battle as like the Spartans basically being a bunch of you know pure, free, strong, you know people with agency against an army of slaves is just not only historically inaccurate, but like, I mean, I can understand why people take offense to it.
I think that's. I remember. I think you might have been the first person to tell me many, many years ago that about that interesting, flip that's in there. The fact that
Yeah.
that several times in the movie, Gerard Butler is clearly saying that you threaten us with slavery and death, and then but but they kind of I think Lena Headey has a bunch of stuff about freedom and stuff like that too, and whatever, and it's definitely worth discussing, I think, in my opinion, but I don't really see it as a problem with the movie. To me, it's just all it is a product of the fact that it's an American movie. I mean, you can see all kinds of, and I mean, also it's an American movie, and it's a movie that's not particularly historically accurate and doesn't claim to be. I think it would be far, far more offensive thing to exist in this movie if this movie was presented more like, Braveheart, or more like, I don't know, Gettysburg or something, Saving Private Ryan, like something where it's like at least striving to be accurate in some of its details or most of its details, the important details, stuff like that. Whereas this movie has Spartans fighting with no armor.
Yeah.
They're in Speedos, like, I mean, but the particularly the aspect of the slavery and the freedom and all that, the way that they frame all of that stuff, to me, that's just a product of it being an American movie. Because like you can see that in a lot of other movies. I mean, Aladdin is a perfect one too. There's like Aladdin is my favorite, Disney animated feature, and it's like it makes me chuckle when I think about like how the basic premise of that movie is about freedom. It's about Jasmine's freedom to marry who she wants, and the genie having freedom to live his life and stuff like that. And it's like these are such American concepts, and it's so completely alien to the region that it's being made in, that it's depicting, I should say, or something like that. But it's like, who cares? I mean, this is an American movie, and they're just taking a classic story and they're making it into what they want to make it. You can see other foreign films do the same thing. I don't have a great example at the moment, but certainly there's some either Hong Kong films or Japanese films or whatever. I'm sure there's, if I can't think of any examples at the moment, but probably some Bollywood films, out there too, where it's like, they probably took a concept of or a story and they made a movie out of it, and the movie gets changed a bit to fix their concept of what the story is that they're trying to tell, and whatever. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth bringing up. It's the historical inaccuracies, especially when it comes to that, because it's opposite of how it should be. But it doesn't really bother me that much.
Yeah, I mean, and historically, I'm actually reading an article about it. I mean, Persia did invade Greece, like several times, and then this whole story unfolded. And in one of the paintings that they did about it, they're actually completely naked. They don't even have, they barely have just a shield and a sword.
What?
They don't even have speedos.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Not how I would want to go into battle.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the battle itself. I just it's a painting of Leonidas. It's from 1814. It's in the Louvre. But in any case, yeah, go ahead. Man.
I mean, the Battle of Marathon happened 10 years before that.
Yeah,
that
exactly. This was like the second wave invasion of Persia, and I think it's kind of like, it reminds me of like the Top Gun Maverick, how in modern movies, because you don't want to like hurt anybody's feelings, they've basically made the enemy be like an unknown origin essentially, because they don't want to like, well, we can't be the Russian, they can't be Middle Eastern, they can't make it China. Everybody in the global, with globalism and everything, it feels like every little thing that you're gonna do is gonna hurt somebody's feelings, whether it's a nation or a leftist, or a right wing. But yeah, I feel like it's history. It happened to some degree, Persia was an empire at some point, and it conquered. And yes, slaves existed in most nations at the time, including in Sparta. But
Yeah.
I don't think it makes them like less or more immoral than other states around it. They're just they symbolize this idea of this warrior tribe that just like wouldn't
Yeah.
take shit from nobody.
Right. They were the Klingons of Greece.
Yeah, in a way, and it's not to say again. I'm not condoning it. I don't think it's the way to live. Like he says how like the whole scenes with him saying like I brought more soldiers than you did because my soldiers are full-time soldiers and your soldiers are like blacksmith and carpenters and whatnot. I don't know if that's a good idea. I think it's a bad life to live to not have an rewarding occupation that is not involved purely in violence. But it's this notion of like, I rather die than to be ruled by someone else.
Yeah.
Like that whole idea is what's trying to be illustrated here. And yeah, maybe in some cases it is better to surrender and then bide your time and eventually like empires fall. But in this specific case, the whole point is they're trying to inspire a whole nation, and historically what happens is that because they've delayed them and is why they were able to win the war eventually, and Persia wasn't able to take over Greece for a second in the second try.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I have to obviously fundamentally, give the movie points for is that Leonidas lived up to the principles of, Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death.
Yeah,
So I could be
exactly.
wrong.
That's why I'm surprised that like being that you are a big fan of movies about freedom, but
It's just, yeah. I mean, I am a huge fan. I just, there are just so many glaring issues that I have with this. It's just like aesthetically.
And this is not as libertarian of a type of freedom as it is just like not wanting to be a slave. Or also there's not enough communism here too.
There's
It's
tyranny. There's
There's
tyranny.
tyranny.
you
Yeah,
know,
there's
it's placating freedom. It's. I mean, it's freedom in rhetoric and not in actual practice.
Probably more freedom than they would have under Xerxes.
Uh,
yeah,
I,
and it also makes the point that it doesn't shy away from the fact that yeah, politics sucks and there's corrupt people and it's imperfect, and the Senate is not behind their king, but that's still it's ours. It's kind of like the whole, going back to like the Jewish state, like the Jewish state is not perfect, and there's like infighting, and Jews come from all parts of the world, and it's not an easy place to like get along. But and then with all the conflict around it, but it's ours. There's something about like, but at least it's like a place we can call our own, and we have self-determination, and self-determination is one of the most important things I think consistently in
Absolutely.
like human you know human
History.
nature. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I I just wanted to say this. It's funny you guys mentioned Troy before this. You were kind of comparing some stuff earlier when you were talking about like the scope of it and everything. And it's a very good movie to compare it to because it was only a few years before this, I think, and 1 or 2 years before it. Um, I almost kind of wonder if Gladiator was such a monumental movie that it caused like 6 years of these sorts of movies to start coming out. Uh, but anyway, I was just going to say that it's funny because I do think that 300 has a number of problems, but while I am a fan of the movie Troy, I think it has far more problems.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I,
Mhm.
I mean, my best moment in Troy is the actual like hand the combat between Achilles and Hector. I mean that was just. Also, Eric Bana. How the fuck is that guy not still a movie star?
Yeah.
I mean
Well,
that.
he is a movie star. He's just not as his career is not what it should be.
No, I mean, I'm a heterosexual guy, and I would bang that any day. And he's
Wow.
uh, no, but I mean, he's versatile. He plugs into every role. He's always charismatic. He's always fun to look at. He's always fun to listen to. I don't know how this guy is not like A-list. I
Yeah.
don't understand how this guy is flying under the radar.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say I like him too. I feel like he's sort of like an action version of Adrian Brody. Um, like I think he's not Brad Pitt. Like he's not Russell Crowe. Like he's not a classic leading man. That's why I think he's not plugged into big roles as much. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure
but
he's kept pretty
if
busy.
Ed Norton can do it, then why can't Eric Bana?
Ed Norton, I would say, is a more versatile actor. I mean,
Versatile, yeah, but he doesn't. But Eric Bana's got at least as much screen presence as Ed Norton, and that's generally what Ed Norton's my go-to example of great, amazing actor who just doesn't have that leading man screen presence that you'd get with like Brad Pitt and you know Tom Cruise.
and by the way, Edward Norton, I think more so because he's like an ass. Like he hasn't been in too many movies. He's lately been in a few Wes Anderson movies because they get along. But he's also been underused in recent years.
Yeah,
Seems like.
maybe, but I mean, well, compare his career to Eric Bana's though.
Yeah, but again, I do think he's a better actor. I mean, like he's
Yeah,
an Oscar
that's
winner,
probably
no?
true. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say, and maybe Matt's trying to say, I don't know, is that we're getting a little bit on a tangent here, but I feel like Eric Bana could be an Oscar-winning actor with the right project.
Yeah, but he would really need the right project. Whereas
Yeah,
Edward Norton is
no, you're
Edward
right. You're
Norton's
right.
like
Edward Norton brings it. Yeah,
is a more cerebral like actor, like yeah, which is actually not super common for American actors. He's an interesting actor. Like he really like when he like nails a role, he really nails it.
oh yeah,
But yeah, he's got his problems too.
And
yeah.
actually, the biggest problem the biggest problem with Eric Bana is that he's too likable. I I I mean, you know,
He's never going to be like a villain.
I right. I mean, the fact that he was playing Hector uh uh, in that movie, and you knew that he was going to die, no matter how good that action scene was between he and Brad Pitt. You knew that he was going to die. Uh, you were rooting for Eric Bana the whole time, even though you knew he was going to die.
I had some female friends that I went to go see the movie Troy with, and when we came out, they were talking about how they said, well, I went to this movie specifically to see Brad Pitt, and they said when I left, all I was thinking about was Eric Bana.
Yeah, yeah, he's just too likable.
Well, since we're talking about the actors here, getting back to 300, I just want to say that one of my favorite things about this movie is how this movie completely redefined and jump started or re-jump started Gerard Butler's career. Like, I mean, it's like night and day difference, the kind of roles he was getting before and after. I mean, even though he had some notable roles before, Dracula and Phantom of the Opera and stuff like that, where it was like big types of roles, but like this was like what changed everything for him. And there's no wonder about it. You watch the movie and he's just outstanding, and his presence is unmistakable. I mean, it's incredible. And despite all of that, and the list of people I want to mention in this cast, despite all of that, Fassbender steals this movie more so than almost anyone has ever stolen a movie, at least as far back as Val Kilmer stealing Tombstone.
Yep.
Yeah. He's very good. I mean, I think I'm sure that's when he kind of got on people's radar, is when he did this movie.
Gotta be. But yeah, I mean, it's not just him. I mean, Lena Headey is great. She's amazing in it. I mean, this is the kind of movie where I would get bored out of my mind every time they cut away from the action, and yet she is interesting enough to keep my attention. I think she was great. And the guy whose name I always forget, but I always feel bad for him because I think he's so good in The Wire, and the only thing he's ever done, I think, in movies is like always play this like sleazy bad guy, but the politician guy, he's really good in the scenes with her and stuff. But Rodrigo Santoro,
Dominic West.
Dominic West. Yeah, he's great. But Rodrigo Santoro is so amazing in this movie that for years, actually still to this day, I think, when I'm having conversations with people and someone's talking about like, you name it, whatever movie, Westworld, or that one about the Chilean crisis with the people in the cave, or like Love Actually, or anything, like somebody will be talking about a scene that might have him in it or whatever, and I'll just be like, oh yeah, and Xerxes, like that's all I think about him as. He's just he doesn't even look anything like himself. He's incredible. But I just like, that's how I think of this guy, is just as Xerxes.
And he looks nothing like himself in the
no.
in the movie. It's too much crap on his face.
I also like David Wenham. I don't think this is the movie I think is his best performance.
The narrator.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, he's had some fun roles in other movies. I think he's one of the finer characters in what is otherwise a somewhat forgettable movie, but that Van Helsing movie that Hugh Jackman made. But he's been in other stuff too. But this is the movie that I think almost everyone would remember him from if they see him in a role or something. But I really wish I could see him in more stuff too, because I think he's really good. No,
it's intense. I think it was also one of the first movies that kind of like had the whole everybody's got abs thing. That's the one thing I was watching in this movie, and it's like wow, it's like everybody is flexing all the time. It's just like, people
just
don't
severely
really look
dehydrated.
Like that. Exactly.
I can guarantee you that this movie, right off camera, just outside the blue screen or green screen, they probably had a lot of gym equipment for these guys, just like, it's like 30 seconds to action, and they're out there just curling, just like just doing sit-ups and shit.
Yeah. No, I wondered if there was some I don't know, some CGI worked into that. It's just
I've been told that's what they did for Top Gun, the original one, for the volleyball scene. All four of those guys were just maxing out right off camera right before they'd say action.
Oh yeah, like the exercise and stuff.
Yeah, they were just doing a lot of like sit-ups and curls and push-ups and stuff like that, so that they could just like walk on camera and just like flex,
Yeah. No, it is funny because like this notion that you need to look like that, you need to have abs to be strong is actually not very true, but you can't deny that visually it just makes a lot of sense.
Well, this movie, I always tell people this movie's got a little something for everybody. You know, I remember when I got
for the
this movie on
ladies.
DVD.
That's right.
Yeah, when I got this movie on DVD, I remember I was watching it and at home, and well, I should say at my parents' house or something, or probably my grandparents' house or something like that. But I was watching it at a house somewhere, and I remember my mom coming in and looking at it and just going like shaking her head like, "What the heck is this?" Like she wasn't aware of the movie or anything. But I was like, "That was 300. It's about the Battle of Thermopylae," and she just goes, "Why are they all almost naked?" and I was just like telling her like, "Well, there's, you know, I don't remember how I said it. I definitely didn't say it like this, but the gist I was trying to get across was like, there's a lot of tits in the first half of this movie, you know, and it's a very guy oriented, masculine, testosterone injected film. So you know, you gotta have something for the ladies, you know. You got a lot of mostly naked men in this movie.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's like Magic Mike with spears
And a
basically,
better story. I think there
and
was
a better
spears to
story.
Magic Mike, from what I've been told, anyway.
Was it? Well, there's definitely polls, I'm assuming,
Yeah, probably.
but yeah, I like the Louis C.K. thing. So when he talks
What do you
about
think?
like I'm not I'm pretty sure I'm not gay, but I'm probably top drawer gay. It's like, you know, if you come to me with like a Brad Pitt or like, this is the reason why I can't watch like I can't watch Magic Mike, because I can't see like Matthew McConaughey or you know, like what's the lead guy? I keep
Channing
forgetting.
Tatum.
Channing Tatum, like that's top drawer. Like I guess it might move. It might do something to me, and I don't want to be moved.
He doesn't want to question himself. Louis C.K. is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I can't even imagine showing this to Diana. Like she would totally. It's funny because I just showed her Sweeney Todd, and yeah, and I don't know, I because it's a musical. She likes musicals, and it's one of my favorite musicals. But then it's like there's so much blood.
Yeah.
And I forgot. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not, but it's not a horror movie. It's not a big part of the story.
No, but there's a
Um,
lot.
but it really bothered her. But but I think she still liked it well enough. She appreciated it, but it was like, but I could do with less blood. It's like Tarantino-esque. Like I forgot how bad it gets there.
Yeah. There's a lot of throat slitting.
Yeah. No, not only that, but just like, yeah, the spritz, like all the
Yeah.
over the top like spritz that like I don't even
Yeah.
even know if that can happen to an actual human, but it seems like Tarantino and Tim Burton's feel like it can. But
One thing I was gonna bring up, just because I thought this was worth talking about. When this movie came out, um, you know, this is it's been going on for a long time now, probably even before when this movie came out for sure. But I know that this was when we definitely had already gotten to the point where movie studios were cutting a teaser trailer, then they were cutting like a trailer a trailer B, and sometimes like a trailer C to promote the movies. You know, they're like, as you're going to the movies 7 months, 8 months before it comes out, you get the teaser, and then when the trailer finally drops, it's like the big trailer that everyone wants to see. And then for these big blockbuster movies, sometimes when you go see a movie 2 months later, they want the hype to get going, but they don't want you to like get up and go get your popcorn. So they'll show you a different trailer. You know, they'll cut it differently, show you even more of it and everything. This is the kind of stuff I actually kind of hate. Mostly because I think that trailer companies are showing way too much of movies these days, and I can generally tell within the first 30 seconds to a minute of a trailer whether I'm going to want to watch the movie or not. And so when I've already decided that I want to watch something, I hate when 2 months later I go to the theaters and I'm suddenly seeing more of of the movie already before I even get a chance to see the movie. I'm like already upset about it. But I wanted to bring this up because this was a movie. Like I said, I was working in a theater at the time, so I was seeing everything under the sun, and I was going and seeing lots and lots of trailers. I was a projectionist. I was working at the projection booth at the time, so I was, I don't think I was quite assembling movies yet, but I was definitely watching stuff with the, let's just say I was watching a lot of stuff. But the point I'm getting at here, slowly, is that myself and my coworkers, my friends, everyone I talked to about this movie, when the trailer came out, it was so amazing. And there was so much hype on this trailer. And then every time a new trailer would come out, they found a way to amp me up even more. Like, the trailers for this movie were so good that the moments that they would show, they'd have Fassbender talking to the guy he's just chopped his arm off. We didn't know that at the time yet, of course, but like he's talking to the emissary guy, and he's like, yelling at him, saying like, our arrows will blot out the sun. And then he's just like, well, then we're going to fight in the shade, and he's like laughing at him and stuff. And they're showing just little shots of them pushing people off the cliff. They're showing the like shots of people being stabbed. And then you get that epic shot after the arrows have come down when Gerard Butler stands up and he's got like 6 arrows stuck in his shield, and he just takes his sword or spear or something and just breaks them off his shield. It's like, it's candy. I mean, it's incredible. And I just remember that each one seemed to get more and more exciting and show more and more awesomeness, to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to see this movie. And I just remember that years later, I was talking with some people, and certainly not quite as good of a movie, but I remember when The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American remake, came out. I remember the trailers for that being so good, and I would talk to people, and we were like, God, that's a great trailer. And I said, I don't think I've seen a trailer that it excites me this much since 300.
Cool.
When was the trailer for I do remember the trailers for this movie being like definitely it's like, oh boy, you got to see this. That's
Yep.
like I didn't feel like there was any trepidation. Oh, this is going to be over the top. Maybe that's the thing. I might have been at the right age for that. Like, it's possible that this movie comes out now and I'm like, ah, come on, that's too much. And then maybe word of mouth, I would like catch it later on streaming. But when was like Tinker Tailor? That was like later, right?
I
2011.
think that was
Yeah.
the 2011. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because I don't know why I always stick to my guns that that's possibly the greatest trailer ever.
I remember us talking about how it's a great movie. I mean, it's a great movie.
It's a
but,
good
But the
movie.
trailer
The
for
trailer
Tinker
is, like,
Tailor is better than the
unbelievable.
movie.
Yeah,
The trailer is better. It's crazy.
yeah, it's yeah, it might be a worth discussion. The whole like trailer thing, some of the best trailers of all time. But it's funny, yeah. In recent years, I don't really watch trailers because I don't go to theaters as much, so I just don't come across as many of them. Also, I used to religiously like watch them on YouTube and whatnot, to just see if I'm interested in the movie. But I just don't do that anymore. I just kind of see where the reviews fall, and then if it's got a good word of mouth, I catch it on streaming, basically.
I still watch trailers on YouTube a lot because I find it more time efficient, and because of what I talked about earlier, I like being able to watch the first minute of a trailer and stop it, because I really feel like those last 20 to 30 seconds or so is when they start showing you all sorts of stuff that I don't need to see yet. I've already figured out if I'm going to watch the movie or not.
Yeah, it's probably a good strategy.
And nowadays, it helps that most theaters these days have assigned seating, because I can show up like 4 or 5 minutes before the actual start time of the movie and miss 80% of the trailers.
That's good. Anything that we haven't covered about 300?
It's a roughly hour and a half to 2 hour movie. I don't remember the actual runtime. Let's see. I should actually say that, because it's going to sound stupid.
It's under 2 hours. I think.
It's just under 2 hours. So this
157.
300 is almost a 2 hour movie, and essentially after 45 minutes of setup, it's a massive climactic battle scene broken up into a couple of parts, and it's awesome.
Yeah, which is kind of like my favorite Star Wars movie. Or at least when I was younger, Return of the Jedi to me is basically that too. Like they rescue Han, and the rest of the movie is climax.
Well, it feels like that, but I mean, when they get to Endor, there's a whole like 30 minutes with the Ewoks before the battle.
Yeah, that's true, but it's in preparation for it. That's true,
Yeah,
but it's yeah. But even saving Han is like an action sequence of its own. So
absolutely.
yeah.
One of the greatest sequences of all Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, we've discussed this. The whole Empire Strikes Back is Act One and beginning of Act Two, and then like the continuation of Act Two and Act Three is Return of the Jedi. If you look at that as one story, those two movies.
Yeah.
So, anywho, yeah, no, 300 has definitely got that in its veins. Like it's not like The Dark Knight where it's just constant thumping action. But yes, it's like it's got a very short setup, and it just really goes for it all the way. And like you said, the scenes where they cut to the politics and it's good. That's the way it should be. It should be giving you a breather. A lot of movies
Yeah.
will just
Yeah.
like kind of hit you too much that like it's just that there's no balance. This movie just had balance. Even Snyder himself like sometimes like just doesn't have enough balance. Definitely like the Batman v Superman thing, and he lost it a bit. And
That movie just suffers from being a very poor script too.
yeah, I'm sure, and the story matters exactly. Like there's no denying at this point that Snyder does much better when he's working with like a source material, especially if it's like a well-defined source material, like a specific comic book and
Yeah.
300 Watchmen.
Well, and I mean, his first, or not his first, was it the remake of Dawn of the Dead? If you get somebody else to write the script for him and give it to him, something that's like usually a lot better, obviously.
Yeah, it's one thing I was gonna check as the thing he's working on, the science fiction thing. Is it like is it based on I think it's an original story.
I
Yeah.
didn't even know he was working on something.
No, the Rebel Moon. It's gonna be
Oh,
next
that one. Yeah. I
December.
forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had heard that. Yeah.
Kind of like his Star Wars of sorts, or his Avatar. Very yeah. Avi worked on it for a
Oh,
few
really?
days.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I guess they were shooting in Santa Clarita or something.
This is not of consequence. You could probably cut it out if you want to, but I was just looking right now. Tim Connolly was the actor who played the father, Leonidas's father, in the flashback scenes. When he's like throwing him around on the ground, he's teaching him about his shield and all that stuff like that. That's all. He's Gerard Butler's stuntman.
Who was it? The
guy's name is
father?
Tim Connolly, but he plays the father in the flashbacks, like Leonidas, the king's fathers, or
see.
Leonidas's father, and he's the stuntman for the rest of the movie, which makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. I saw that. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw like also unrelated, but like I saw this documentary about like Back to the Future, like the making of, and they're talking about like how Eric Stoltz was replaced by Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
And then there are like some theories online that about some of the shots, like some of the eye line, like when Biff and Marty are like standing next to each other, that the eye line doesn't fit Michael J. Fox, that it might have been the behind over the shoulder Stoltz stuff, and that was not reshot. And apparently from the interviews they said like, oh yeah, we reshot it. Like what you're seeing is a stunt double. The stunt double for Michael J. Fox might have been slightly taller, but most of that stuff was reshot. At least that's what they claim. But yeah. Anyways.